Hi, I'm Jerry Meints. Stay tuned for It's a Family Affair, brought to you as a public service by Time Warner Cable TV 10. Hi, I'm Jerry Meints. Welcome to It's a Family Affair. Deb is back. Deb, you've been on vacation for a couple of weeks. We've missed you.
Well, I've been right at home, Jerry. I don't know where you've been. I haven't been on TV, so I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. You know, we had some fun last week doing the Shadow show. And this week, we're going to be focusing on couples shadow.
That's why we brought our little friends here.
Yeah, these are shadowy little creatures here that we'll be talking to later.
Shadows of love.
Yeah. Well, you know, to help our viewers understand what the shadow is all about, it's the disliked and disowned and cut off parts of the personality that we don't want to admit to. We don't want to recognize, the dark side.
The parts of ourselves that we don't like, or we're afraid of because they're so immensely powerful. We can dislike ourselves, the beautiful parts of ourselves, because we're afraid someone's going to get jealous or hurt us because we're too good.
The light shadow.
The light shadow, or we can dislike ourselves because we are afraid of aspects of ourselves that may be very villainous or murderous or wild. So the shadow is all that stuff that we just don't allow into everyday consciousness, and it sits inside of us and bubbles its little cauldron away and stays deep, dark recesses of ourselves. And we want to bring it out into the light today to help heal it.
Yeah, because the more we disown it, the more we deny our shadow, the more it accumulates.
Right. It gets tremendous power.
And then we have dark moods or psychosomatic illnesses or these bizarre accidents that seem to, you know, fit the drama.
Right on. And you know, if you've ever tried to train a parrot to speak, it will learn swear words much quicker than hello and Polly want a cracker.
Because we put so much English on the ball.
Right. The shadow part of our personality, if we ever slipped and swore in front of a parrot, that's what's going to say when your mother walks in the door.
Yeah.
So our shadow has tremendous energy. Our children pick up on that. The disowned parts of ourselves slip out, and they got a lot of energy. Right.
Well, you know what? Our focus in the first part of the show is about falling in love. And the shadow plays an interesting you know, role in this whole process of falling in love.
That's right.
Because boy meets girl, and he projects the fantasy of the perfect female onto this blank screen he doesn't even know. And of course, girl meets boy, she's doing the same thing, projecting the fantasy of the perfect guy onto this blank screen she doesn't even know. And they fall in love, or they really fall into fantasy land.
And they fall into lust as well.
Yeah.
And they're infatuated, and the root word of infatuous means foolish. So when we fall in love with someone, we may be taking our own greatness and projecting it out onto another person so we can collect them and bring them home and they can help pay the mortgage.
Right.
Now that all works out fine.
Except
that it's the most powerful projection of all. We project the most noble and infinitely valuable part of our own being onto another human being. We put the bride and the groom on the top of the cake. And when you're at the top, Jerry, where do you have to go?
You have nowhere to go but down, Debbie darling. Okay.
So what we have...
And many couples do that. That's why we have such a busy marriage counseling business here.
That's right.
Okay, in the desert.
If we could redesign the wedding cake, we'd put the marriage couple at the bottom. We give them a pickaxe, a rope, and a flashlight. And, and they'd have a lot of places, you know, ballet ropes and all that. And at the top, we might see the old couple resting after the long, arduous climb. The container of marriage is not large enough to hold our power. It's like taking 100,000 volts and plugging them into a 110-volt system.
Yeah. Bzzz.
We expect
Little
everything
fry.
from one another. We expect
Right.
perfection, and our white wedding dress is messed up real quick. It's too white, and earth is dirty.
That's
And
it.
so we're going to talk about mature love and help people through
Because
it.
it's so much more healthy than this whole, romantic fantasy land love experience.
We can't
But-
live in fantasy land.
No, but real life sometimes entails fantasy. Then we move on to reality, and then we move on to mature love.
Well, that's what we hope to do.
That's it.
A lot of people like to keep recreating the fantasy, so the minute it gets real, for instance, I find out that the strength I admired in you can also mean rigidity. And I don't know how to deal with my own inner rigidity except to be rigid. I may want to trade you in for a new model. The minute you see in me something less than beauty, you may want to trade me in for another model.
Of course, we've been at this 22 years. I think we're kind of set in our commitment. However, most couples that are new to the whole dance are not. And they
Right.
do get that disillusionment. And then they start to look at how much greener the grass is on the other side of the fence. And,
Right.
and then they begin to project that fantasy onto some new person, the secretary or the gal next door or somebody at work.
Right.
So yeah, what we're looking at here is a process wherein we can bring some shadow awareness into our own consciousness and into our own relationships to find better balance, real love, and serenity.
Yes, for ourselves. When I enter a marital contract with you, Jerry, I'm basically saying I'm going to find out about myself. Who you are is going to provide a base to push my buttons as well as raise me up. And I'm going to do that in turn for you. Now, a mature couple might have two weddings. The first wedding would be called a shadow wedding, and we would have shadow vows, and we brought our bride and groom with us. So, Jerry, would you like to start the vows
Yes, I
right now?
would. Let's
You are the
see.
groom, and you are going to say to me, the bride.
I will give you an identity and make you see the world as an extension of myself.
I will be compliant and sweet, but underneath I will have the real control. If anything goes wrong, I will take your money and your house.
Ooh, scary.
Yikes.
Okay.
Now,
And of course, we know that happens in the real world. We deal with high conflict divorce all the time. And, I want to say, because we were talking in our last show about the damage we do when we project our shadow onto someone else. We call it reaction formation. We have an impulse in ourselves we deny. So as soon as we see somebody else exhibiting that impulse, we attack them.
That's right.
And of course, this happens when there's high conflict divorce because, so a parent will say to a child, well, you're just like your dad. And of course, what this does is it creates a splitting of the child. And what we see in this couple is it's like, the good parent, bad parent war. And what happens is that one parent starts to lose the ability to find balance within themselves. They project that bad parent role onto their mate they're divorcing. And now the world becomes polarized. It's heroes and villains. Well, a lot of people can justify that drama all day long, and they can convince themselves, but the damage they do to their children is the following. Splitting. Good daddy me, bad daddy me. Good mommy me, bad mommy me.
Right.
And that splitting is so destructive to the psyche of the child because that polarization doesn't let that child go to the fulcrum, to the holy place, to see the balance between the really cool sides of dad and the not too cool sides of dad, or the real sweet sides of mom and the kind of the angry sides of mom.
Right.
Well, those two parts of all of ourselves are really real, and we need to be able to contain them. But we destroy the child's ability to contain those two truths, the contradiction, the irony,
Paradox.
the paradox,
Right.
when we get into the high conflict divorce and when we begin to project onto those children, just the dark sides of mom or dad.
Right on, Jer.
Crazy, damaging stuff that parents need some real help to stop.
That's right. It's Solomon's baby. That's what you're doing to your child. You're making him choose between you, and you're splitting him right down the middle. And what we don't see, what we fail to see is whenever we're pointing a finger. I learned this in church. There's 3 fingers pointing back at ourselves.
There it is.
And so we have to be really, really careful about what we're pointing at. If we call someone greedy, we might just want to look at the greed inside of ourselves. If we call someone hostile, we might just want to look at the hostility within ourselves. The more we can admit our own flaws, which is the basis of the 12-step program, the more we can take our own personal inventory, the freer we are. And the more we can forgive ourselves by admission, the more likely we are to forgive and accept qualities that are less than perfect in other people.
So, you know, get out of the high drama, folks. Human love is far less exciting than that, but it's a whole lot more stable, and that's what our kids need.
Right.
You know, Deb, let's move on to the spiritual aspects of the shadow.
Right on. Okay, well, we are only the carriers of divine energy. We need a ritual of thanksgiving to contain it and return it to its rightful source. Now, what does that mean? It means that without the energy filling up this mammal right now, it falls on the floor. It's nothing. Our culture's forgotten that. What is this energy? Do we thank it? Do we really have a ritual of thanksgiving for this breath that we're taking in, for this light that is creating color and sound? Our culture has really forgotten that the shadow, the good and the bad, this whole divine drama, this whole divine play, at its source, there's a divine light shining down on all of it. And we need to return to that. And the way I encourage couples who are so inclined to have a ritual of prayer, to bring in the good and the bad, and ask for help in leading.
You know, I know you
the
and I
family.
do that before every show. We also do that when we're challenged by, you know, something in our life, or a passage for one of our children, or threats or challenges or opportunities in our life. And I think that does allow us to take into us as vessels, you know, this energy, this you know, this prana, this golden spiritual energy that, you know, some people call God.
Right on.
And to let it move through us, skip our ego, and move back to bless others.
Now, I know you're going to indulge me.
Okay, absolutely.
This is one of my favorite books. It's The Prophet by Khalil Gibran, and it talks about love in a very interesting way. Love is a gardener. And so I'm going to read a little passage, and then we'll move to the next place. For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you. Even as he is for your growth, so he is for your pruning. Even as he ascends to your height and caresses your tenderest branches that quiver in the sun, so shall he descend to your roots and shake them in their clinging to the earth. Like sheaves of corn, he gathers you unto himself. He threshes you to make you naked. He sifts you to free you from your husks. He grinds you to whiteness. He kneads you until you are pliant. And then he assigns you to a sacred fire that you may become sacred bread for God's sacred feast. All these things shall love do unto you, that you may know the secrets of your heart, and in that knowledge become a fragment of life's heart. But if, in your fear, you would seek only love's peace and love's pleasure, then it is better for you that you cover your nakedness and pass out of love's threshing floor into the seasonless world where you shall laugh, but not all of your laughter, and weep, but not all of your tears. Love is not for sissies, folks. Marriage is not for sissies, it's not for the weak, it's not for the selfish, and it's not for the immature. It will test you, it will shake you to your roots, your partner will push every button you know, and it's only with God's help that you're going to get through it, and with humility to return to the basics of I need to get clear, stop, drop, and roll. Stop this arguing, this angry lightning bolt throwing at each other. Drop into humility and ask for some assistance.
There it is. And you know, Deb, that's one of the many tools we teach in our new book, Love Tools for Everyday Heroes, because we truly believe that it's our job to raise our marriage to mythic levels, to live as heroes, to make being an everyday hero a part not just of being a fireman or a policeman, but being parents, being a couple.
Being a community leader.
There it is.
Saving the planet.
Yeah, all that
We got
stuff.
a lot of stuff to do.
Well, you know,
yes.
what is of value, and that's why we're talking about the shadow, is often buried in our own backyard. This need to take a look at the positive and the negative side.
Right. I mean, a lot of times what we dismiss, we think has no value, such as our marriage and boredom. And, well, if our marriage is boring, look in the mirror. What have you done to spice things up lately? If your marriage is combative, look in the mirror. Are you delivering messages in a way that you can be heard?
Right.
But the treasure is look at yourself.
There it
What
is.
am I doing to increase the peace? If your marriage is dishonest, look in the mirror. What are you doing to create dishonesty? Are you letting your partner know the things that hurt and offend you? Are you letting them know with an I message instead of slamming them, kitchen
Right.
sinking them?
Because your marriage doesn't happen to you, it happens through you. You're an incredible participant in the whole process.
Right.
You know what? Part of the process of marriage is suffering. And we can embrace that suffering if it has meaning.
Right.
And the need to open up to the shadow is incredibly important. You've got a line here I really love, and it's the capacity for paradox is the measure of spiritual growth.
Yes, spiritual strength, too. My therapist told me a long time ago, you have to admit that you hate men, and men have to admit that they hate women. We have to start from this premise. I mean, that sounds terrible to say, and I was shocked and appalled as a young woman. What are you talking about? Hate, 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 you know. But the truth is there's a part of us, just like dogs hate cats and cats hate dogs.
It's the War of the Roses.
That's
and
right.
It's part of what is,
You
and it's
know?
okay. And if we accept that part, then we can find that balance again at that holy spot, at the fulcrum.
Right.
Contain the treasure and the worship that we men have for women, but also contain, you know, the resentment and disdain that men have for women. It's a question of balance, to quote the Moody Blues. And Deb, we're going to be back to talk more about shadows right after these important messages.
I know.
I know I can't alone help, change the world and the way it is, but I know that, my small role and others can make a difference.
Any difference in the world is better than no difference.
If you change one person's aspect of life, then they'll change another and another and another until everything you do makes the world a little bit better.
Everybody has a special purpose in life, and it's our key to find it.
A lot of futures are decided in courtrooms just like this one. Some of those futures belong to neglected and abused children, children too young to speak for themselves. CASA volunteers are everyday people who provide powerful voices in children's lives. They also give them hope. To learn more about the program in your community, please call. Because every child deserves a safe and secure home.
Hi, I'm Jerry Meints. Welcome back to It's a Family Affair. I'm here with my best friend, wife, co-therapist, co-facilitator, co-host, Deborah Meints. Hi, Deb. Yeah. You know, we've been having fun during this show. We're talking about, couples' shadow.
And how difficult the work of love truly is. When we think of it all as a game, we'll mess it up. What we're talking about is that our modern notion of romance destroys the possibility for the reality of love to set in with couples. And romantic love is a modern notion.
Yeah, very.
Prior to the 12th century, and I know that doesn't seem like modern, but believe me, when it comes to the millennia of ages, 12th century is not that many, that's an eye blink ago, Carl Sagan would tell you. In the 12th century, there was the myth of Tristan and Isolde, the romantic lovers. It had a tragic ending. But in this, at this time in history, prior to this, we've had marriage, but marriage was something that your ancestors would prearrange.
Right.
And they would do it on the basis of watching you as a child grow up and figuring out your temperament and your predisposition and what the village itself needed, and consultation with the oracle or God. And at this point, they would choose a mate for you. And there was no notion that this person was going to be an exciting turn-on. This person was going to help you develop your own soul. This person was going to help you to build a house, have a child, get food for the village,
have more cows
in ritual, but bless the village. So there wasn't a lot of stress put on. All that person really needed to do was show up and participate in community events.
Right.
That was it. Now comes the 12th century, and we have a completely new model, which is you take two people.
Tristan.
And Isolde.
Isolde.
Which is one of the first. We have Romeo and Juliet. We have West Side Story. It goes on in ad nauseum. But we take two people who project the best and the highest and the most beautiful qualities onto the other.
Right.
And after about 3 months,
honeymoon's over.
Honeymoon's over.
And he begins to look like this.
And she begins to sound like that.
Right.
And they begin to throw cake at each other, wedding cake at each other.
And it's really hard.
And it's terribly hard because they have no notion that their marriage was meant to be more like an ox cart, you know, to move slowly and travel the ruts and traverse the ruts of life and get them to a place where spiritually they would become whole inside of themselves rather than giving their power to another.
Right, because they started out thinking they were in a race car and this was all going to be hip, slick, and cool.
Right.
And the truth of reality is that it's not, because underneath the TV version of life, there's a subjective experience. The existentialists call those experiences, those emotions, those truths, existentials, because we can't run from them, we can't hide from them. They're everybody's experience once they get down to the truth.
Right.
And of course, the truth in this show that we're talking about that so many people want to avoid is the parts of ourself, this shadow part of ourself that we disown, we cut off, we project.
Right. I mean, marriages can be so fragile. I'll give you a really silly example, but I had a woman come into my office who was ready to divorce her husband when she found a streak in his underpants.
Well, there it is. That's a very you know,
now, this is
very
a part
often
of life.
exists all the time.
This guy had to be Superman. He couldn't be real.
Right.
And in the same way, men will marry a woman, and the first time that they can't perform sexually, they project onto her, oh, the marriage is over. It was all about sex. It had to do with this glorious idea that she was Aphrodite, or she'd always want to be sexual. And the first time she's got a headache, he's out the door. It lasts about as long as Madonna and Sean Penn.
Boy, that was short-lived.
That was short-lived because they're both superstars. And superstars have a way of becoming supernovas that burn out.
Well, they're king babies, too. It's I, me, my.
We can all be king babies. I'm not, you know, just pulling their card.
Although
We've all got that.
They cornered the market there for a while.
Well, they were too young and too foolish. And it's hard to get married. That's why we encourage people to wait a little longer, do your inner work, find your inner male. If you're a woman, your work is to find your inner male before you get married.
What Jung called your animus.
Right, and that would be your own inner strength, your inner direction, your ability to stand up for yourself, your ability to think well of yourself and achieve your goals. And if you're a man,
Jung wanted us to find, as men, our anima, and that is the disowned feminine parts of our personality, without which, integrating into our personality, we can never be healthy.
Right,
because we'll be macho morons.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
The creative aspects. I went to a poetry reading last night, and it was so wonderful over at COD. And we have these great poetry readings in the desert.
Yeah.
And there were as many men as women reading, and there were some young men. And they were communicators, and they were writing about their pain and their passion. And it was awesome to see strong, virile men talking about what made them sad and hurt and afraid and uplifted. And you know what? Those guys have a potential of staying in a relationship with a woman, because women are getting really bored of these grunting guys who can't communicate.
And our son Zane was there doing that very thing, and he builds houses and clinics and does all these other strong things.
You can be a real man and read poetry, and you can dance. So a man needs to do the work of finding how to communicate his vulnerable underbelly feelings, to get in touch with his dreams and aspirations, because so many men just turn into briefcases.
Right. So it goes back to that.
Once they get married, they get a job, and it's the job to the bed, and then the TV and the beer, and they aren't happy with that either.
Yeah. So it goes back to that fulcrum, that holy place from which we can balance the masculine and feminine sides of our personality.
Right.
To create wholeness, to create health, to create balance.
Then I won't ask you, Jerry, when I need inner strength. It's great that you have inner strength. I love your inner strength, but there's times that you can't soothe me. There's times that I need an inner parent who is strong and loving and clear to come to me in my times of sorrow and speak directly to me.
Yeah.
You may not be available. You may be busy with your own life.
Or I may be busy behaving like this guy here, right?
Yeah, not too often. But yes, in the same way, Jerry, when do you need to have your inner feminine come to you?
Yeah. Yeah, in getting in touch with my vulnerability, my underbelly, my sadness, the needs that I have, the longing I have to be close to you. You know, those are all important awarenesses for me. And you know, this stuff I see 5 nights a week in my men's group. I see men growing and evolving at a pace that really is unheard of in the past decade.
You know what's so amazing is once we admit we have an inner monster, or an inner witch, we take the power out of it.
Yeah.
One of the first bit of advice you gave me that was so powerful, I was so terrified to be a public figure, to do a poetry reading.
Right.
I started off as a poet, and I had to get up in front of everybody and read a poem, and you said, Deb, just admit how terrified you are to the audience.
Yeah.
That was the best piece of advice you gave me. I got up in front of the audience and I said, I'm shaking in my boots. The minute I said it, I saw the common humanity that we all shared, and it wasn't so scary anymore. I was scared, and they accepted me, and then I went on to read my poems.
There it is.
It was wonderful. So when you admit in a men's domestic violence group that you can be a hairy monster that can hurt women, but you're also a hurt, vulnerable person underneath that who's just looking for some answers and strength and wisdom and creativity, then your hands are open and you can receive some new information. You're not this hardened person trying to hold up and defend a bunch of bull crud. I think I'd say that on TV. Yeah.
There it is.
Right on. We got some great quotes. Do we have time to read them?
We do.
That life is not for sissies. And the Buddha speaks about our joyful participation in the sorrows of the world, which means that we're aware of how hard our walk with one another is. But we come into it with awareness that you and I, Jerry, are here to make the world a better place by working on ourselves. We joyfully participate, and it hasn't always been easy.
That's right, because the love tools we teach in our counseling, in our workshops, and in our books are the love tools that we perfected at home and practiced.
The School of Hard Knocks.
And made them work for us. Yeah.
That's right.
And you know, the tools work if you do, folks.
Right.
But if you just stick with your old format, you know, your old moves for how you play the game of love and life, you're probably just going to repeat things again and again and again.
Well, there's the saying, when the unstoppable bullet hits the impenetrable wall, we find religious experience. So when we're doing the same old things with the same old people, and it's starting to drive us insane because our life is not getting any better.
Right.
And we just come up, we hit the wall. I can't continue my life this way. It must change. Then religion, which the word means again, legare means to bind together or bridge. Then we have a chance for the broken pieces of ourself to admit that we're broken and to get help and to say, I'm broken and I can't get up, I need help. And that means that I admit my sorrow to you, my partner, and you know that I'm not just a raging witch, but I'm a hurt child. And I'm sad, and I can tell you that in a way you can hear and not feel afraid of.
Well, you know, we've had some fun taking a look at the shadow.
Right on.
And I want to encourage our viewers to tune in next week. We'll be talking about men's tools.
Right on.
Deb, it's been fun. I'm Jerry Meints. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a family affair.